Hello, fellow grapplers. This is Matt with the Grappling Podcast. And in today's episode, Levi and I discuss pros and cons of different belt ranking systems. So this topic is interesting because there are a lot of different ways that promotions can be done throughout different martial arts schools. And we try to touch on some of the popular ones that we're aware of and then share our experience or thoughts as it relates to those different systems. So thank you, everyone. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with a friend, like us on social. It really does help spread the Grappling Podcast message. But without further ado, here are some thoughts on belt ranking systems. I wonder realistically how belts got started in martial arts, and not that whole that your belt just turns colors thing. Like, you know, because it gets, actually I should probably explain that to our listeners. There's this old adage that you started with a white belt and it got so dirty and beaten up it made you a belt.
I think that's the only historical way. I haven't researched it deeply, but I think that's kind of the only thought process. Like it gets dirtied over time, so it means you've done it for a long time.
I wonder if a lot of old martial arts didn't even have systems like that. Like if you're in like a warring time, do you really care? Is it more so just like, did you make it through the battlefield? Awesome. Hey, that's Bob. He's a really good fighter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Bob is part of the something school of, this type of swordsmanship. And
well, it's, I think, kind of militaristic as well. Like it shows your devotion and your skill set, and it just up the ranks. And if you get up the ranks, you get more respect and all this kind of stuff. So I think it kind of started off as that. You know what? You're going to have to hold this conversation up for a second because I need that half of a cookie if my blood sugar is going to stay up.
Okay.
I have this, so give me 1 second.
Yeah, so it was an idea that I was kind of thinking about as far as how did the belts get started in the first place? And I think Levi brought up a really good point there about, maybe there is some type of like military thing, and instead of a rank, you ended up extrapolating these belts when it came to building a business. I think that's kind of an interesting idea about it. Is it purely from a business sense so people can show progress and that they're achieving something? And another interesting topic too, though, is a lot of other like hobbies don't have these stamps in them. If you do woodworking, you're not like a black belt woodworker. If you do CrossFit, you're not a CrossFit, black belt,
Yoga's the same.
Yeah.
Yoga doesn't have any of that. That's kind of an example I use a lot of times.
Track and field.
Yeah, there's no... The hard part is that there's not like yoga competitions, at least I don't think.
I think there is. I think there is. I don't know what you do, but I feel like I've heard this. I'm going to look this up. Now it's your turn to hold the podcast.
Well, this has been a big thought process of mine because especially as owning a studio, looking at the belt promotion process and system, I've been involved for martial arts for over 20 years now. And so I've seen every which way that schools utilize how to recognize progression in the martial arts world. Different belt systems, different awards and certificates, and all these things to measure skill. Now, I will defend the fact that I think for people learning a new skill, that having some sort of progress and some sort of chart of development is huge in motivation. When I had heard about video game tutorials and things like that, they said it was such a huge retention rate for players to see that they were making progress in their skill sets. I mean, almost every video game you can think of that has either experience points or skill achievement, it is all very visual for your training partners, or for your players. Like everybody sees how far they're getting along, and like, oh, I'm only this far away from achieving level 10, or I'm this far from doing this. Like people like to see it.
That's true. It is nice to see what's available.
So the hard part though is that at some point along the journey, people will do activities or video games or whatever as general activities that they just enjoy. Like they don't need the measurement now to help progress. Like I'm sure there's people who play guitar that at the beginning it helped to learn a couple key things to get along, but now it's not like I'm playing guitar to get to this next thing or challenge. It's just an activity that keeps them mentally chill that they enjoy. But I think always when it comes to art or skill sets, if you're truly passionate and enjoy it, To me, I always like this idea of always digging deeper and seeing what more you can get from it. Like, I really want to get more into sculpting. And I think with that, it's like, okay, how can I challenge myself for this next project or this next challenge? You know, like you want to always see what you're capable and made of at that point. And some people get into that with like life motivation and progress, like to say, you know, the real meaning of life is to be able to, you know, fully demonstrate your capabilities and your, you know, who you are in that sense. Like it's so cool to see those kind of things develop. But yoga people do it, but this is more like
do you want to know about the yoga? I found it.
What was it? Did they have competitions?
Competitive yoga. Apparently,
enlightenment.
It's a controversial thing because it appears to conflict with the nature of yoga. The International Federation of Sports Yoga has had annual championships since 1989.
So is it like they do flows and they like?
I think so. Honestly, I'm using Wikipedia here, and it's kind of sparse. It does say that the cup is the Bishnu Sharan Ghosh Cup, and it's held annually in Los Angeles.
Huh.
Ghosh inspired the style of. Okay, it looks like it has to do with a little bit of Bikram yoga, and I think I saw a documentary on that dude, and if it's the one I think it is, that dude's a dirtbag. He like fled the country and things like that.
Then I can see having, you know, him sponsor something like that would be a little iffy.
But yeah, apparently it's a thing that is highly contested, is whether people like accept it or not as competitive yoga.
Interesting.
Yeah, there we go. I thought we learned something. We learned about Bengal tigers
knew about yoga
last time. Now we're learning about competitive yoga.
That's really fascinating.
I wonder if it's just like, remember that episode of South Park where they're like, you just got served, you know, like, dance, brother, you got nothing on me. And they're singing that song.
Yeah.
If it's just like yoga like that, where they're just like, whoa, that was a crazy downward dog, bro.
Got brought.
Yeah. You just got flexed, bro. You know? Holy smokes. Did you see that downward dog to upward dog? I don't know.
I could see something like that. But I could see the measurement, like if you're going through a gymnast routine.
Yeah.
You know, of like your technique and what you're able to pull off. It's like, it makes sense to say this is the technique that you're able to do.
Where does gymnastics end then and yoga begin?
Well, I think yoga is very more controlled movements than gymnastics.
But I'm saying in a competitive sport, though, you'll eventually have to, there'll be some type of like inflection point where people have to move faster or more dramatically to be able to seal the Barishnu, I can't remember what the name of the cup is.
This all becomes interesting, Matt, because when you start talking about like activity competitions, you're measuring who's capable of expressing skill sets more than another person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yoga just makes sense to me. Like if you're capable of doing these said things and this person is less capable, I mean, that seems like more of a measurement to me. Like you go to skating, you know, or whatever. It's like
everything graduates though towards gymnastics.
They're going through routines though. You know, like everything's a routine that you go through, and there's judges who know the sport very well and the activity and going like, all right, that was a sloppy spin or a sloppy whatever. It's like,
but no, that's what I'm saying though, is like, if you, we don't want to spend too much time on this, but like, okay, it's movement, right? And unless there are these radically complex moves, which I know yoga's got a few crazy moves, but like for the most part, gymnastics dunks on it when it comes to like what it can do.
Yeah.
Like at some point, for the sake of the competition always having a higher bar, somebody's going to start throwing in flips into their routines and stuff.
Sure.
So I was just like, what point is it just gymnastics with some more?
Oh, sure.
With the yoga poses,
I could
you know,
see. Yeah,
like it
that
could
makes
just
total sense.
because like someone comes out there or does break dancing and then combines it with something crazy.
Oh, with the yoga, okay.
You know,
I see
like
what you're saying now.
it's just going to keep becoming more and more dynamic.
Yeah.
And so,
well, we can definitely get into that conversation when it becomes like with jiu-jitsu. People are saying there's a lot more wrestling getting into jiu-jitsu as well too. You know, like or judo to be like where has it become wrestling now or submission wrestling versus just jiu-jitsu itself?
Yeah. But okay, so we were talking about belt promotions.
Belt promotions.
We learned about yoga, active competitive yoga.
You're level 1 towards enlightenment.
Yeah. Ta-ching.
Meditation, competitive.
Another $10,000 and you could be level 2.
I think that's Scientology. I think that's what it is.
But yeah, so belt promotions, belt standards is like you said, a topic you've been thinking a lot about. You've put a lot of thought into it in the 2 years I've known you, or however, maybe a little more than 2 years we've known each other.
Mhm.
Like that topic, it seems like every month it seems like you're kind of chip away at this and be like, okay, what
That's a good
makes
word at it.
sense for
Chipping
this?
away.
Because there's a lot of different weird dichotomies that these conversations end up going into, where it's like, does it require, there's knowledge and then there's application, and does application also require competition? But then we got in that whole discussion, and that I didn't realize this until we were, you, Luke, and I were talking about how if, is there any competition that actually expresses, essentially submission grappling in its like fullest form? There's all these different variations of rule sets to make it more different win conditions and yada, 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 right?
Yep.
Like a lot of different variations of it. But then if you include that kind of turns this into a Gordian knot in a way where you're using maybe an imperfect measurement to decide whether a person should be promoted or not. Because if the competition doesn't actually reflect the thing that you're looking to measure, doesn't matter, right? So anyways, that was just a lot of different things going on there that you've thrown around and we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, I definitely think the conversation between you and Luke and myself was kind of getting more to the point of like, how do you measure jiu-jitsu? How do you measure someone's jiu-jitsu skill level? Or just their ability to perform grappling skill? Yeah, that's a good one. Now, here's the difficult part, everybody. Grappling is a umbrella term for a variety of aspects of, combat grappling or whatever you want to call it. Like
combat without strikes, maybe?
Yeah, no strikings. Like it's there's stand-up phases, there's throws, there's pinning on the ground, and there's submission. So there's basically like 4 different core aspects when it comes to grappling that various martial arts specialize in. So wrestling specializes in, obviously, like leg takedowns and lower body takedowns and upper body takedowns and pins and things like that. And judo specializes in hip throws and upper body throws. Not so much in pins, very little in jiu-jitsu. And then jiu-jitsu specializes heavily on submissions, sometimes in pins, but definitely does not specialize in throws or standing wrestling, even though all of our competitions have the ability to start on your feet and you get penalized if you do not start on your feet by a point.
Except for at the Theory Grappling Invitational?
Yeah, that's the only one. I don't care what you do. But this kind of gets to our point of saying, how do you measure jiu-jitsu? Now, I will say, as a history lesson, when we start talking about martial arts, like I said, I've had 20 years of martial arts experience. That was not all jiu-jitsu. It started in karate, and Matt's journey basically started in karate as well, too. And our previous karate experience, when we were younger in our teenage years, and lots of kids going through the belt ranking system, their measurement was on a factor of time. It was just time.
Yeah, attendance.
So I'll use this as one big factor.
Did you ever see anybody not get promoted?
1 or 2 people, but it was people who were basically like throwing big fits or were just blatantly saying, I'm not going to attend the black belt training, or just, it was like weird individuals that just were like big, I don't know, emotional breakdowns or angry or whatever, and parents being a little odd too. But people who showed up and just did it, got their belts awarded to them. So I say that because there's a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools too that also promote their students based on just time. And I'll specify time. Time is either attendance, like Matt said, like class attendance, like you will have a card to say, for example, if you attend 100 Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, you will get promoted to your next stripe or to your next belt. Like that's how it works. Other people, it's like months or years. And I've heard Matt say this many times too, when people have asked him like, oh, how long have you been training, Matt? And you go, oh, well, I took a couple breaks here and there. So maybe in total, whatever.
2 years.
2 years, yeah. So, but that's hard to have a conversation with a random person to say, how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu? Like roughly 5 years on and off.
Yeah.
That's easier to say. But as far as the years is concerned, I've seen people who, gyms to say, you cannot get a blue belt unless you've trained for at least 2 years. And I go, what does that mean? 2 years? Like, could I come in for one class and then next class and then be gone for 3 or 4 months, keep paying my membership, pop in class another time too, and then within like 2 years of roughly on-off attendance, I go, cool, there's my blue belt. Well, That seems weird now. And same with class attendance. You could show up for 100 classes, not be too engaged with your techniques, not spar that much, whatever the case may be. And once you have your card filled up, you look at your coach and go, cool, I'm ready to get promoted. Both of those things, I like applying this to chess. Because with chess, let's say, for example, me and Matt play chess 100 matches or 100 times we've come to train and play chess. Well, yes, it kind of makes sense roughly that if you play chess more and more, that maybe you'll get better and better. But just by moving the chess pieces does not, if you're not engaged with the process of getting better, it doesn't mean you'll automatically be better. And because with chess, it has the ELO scoring. So if you win or lose, your score goes up or down. If someone said you have to wait 2 years until you get a specific chess score, well, what does that mean? Can I just play chess on and off for 2 years, and then by 2 years I have the ability to do it? Or if I show up and say I play 100 matches, I'm automatically a better scorer. It has nothing to do with your capability, your skill set. You know, like you and I went rock climbing one time. Does me trying a wall 100 times means I can climb up that wall on that 100th time?
Depends on the difficulty of the wall.
But to say that it might take me 30 times to go up it. It might take me 5 times.
Yeah, or you might get on your first.
I'm on the first or the 300th time. So just by you showing up like to a college or school to classes does not mean you get the degree. Imagine if schools work that way. To say we don't care about the tests or the quizzes. You just have to be in class 100 times, and then we'll get you your degree.
That's what it's like to be rich, I think.
that's different.
Just show up. Just show up. Radically wealthy.
But that's the idea.
That dad's a billionaire.
If you use that as a metric, I don't feel that you are doing your students justice, because there's some people I've known personally that are really passionate about martial arts and jiu-jitsu, really bite the bug. Either have...
Ooh, they're biting the bug.
They're biting the bug. They bite the bug.
They
bit
got
them.
bit by.
No, they bite the bug. That's how passionate they are.
They just get bit. They bit back.
That's how I mess up phrases all the time. So you really are drawn to it. You're watching instructionals offline or off of class time. You're asking questions. You're really diving into terminology.
Gordon Ryan got his black belt in 4 years, right?
Yeah, but he was training like tons of hours every single day, driving back and forth to Danaher's gym and working on it. So there wasn't class attendance. He just wanted to be the best in the world. So, for people who really want to go forward, the problem is with time. When you say a minimum, they could say it average takes about 100 classes to set the expectations. To say how long does it roughly take? Well, if you average twice a week classes and you kind of look here and there for content, it'll probably take you about, 2 years. The problem is that this old model of time and energy with learning jiu-jitsu is an old model of jiu-jitsu, because it assumes that this is pre-1980s, where there's no online access or hardly any books, and the only source of you getting jiu-jitsu is to go to your professor at some gym and learn it. You don't need to do that now. You can pop on BJJ Fanatics. You can pop on YouTube instructional. Yourself included, many people here I know the studio will sit and watch jiu-jitsu stuff at nighttime. That's added time of them developing frameworks and ideas and 90% processes. 90% of
instructionals are watched on the toilet, I'm convinced.
There you go. I'm sure that's a stat. That sounds like a jiu-jitsu invention, something like that, like watching or whatever. But it is... There's way more ways for people to absorb jiu-jitsu outside the school that they can learn and
this isn't the feudal era of Japan,
So I'm saying that's the way I'm coming to 100 classes, absorbing 100 classes worth of information will get you to that point of understanding. It's
they're assuming good class structure and all that other stuff too.
They're assuming it, but the problem is that you don't account for the extremes. And the extremes are the people who really are digging this material quick and they want to get better. And the other extreme of people really giving super, super, super minimal effort and are just focused on wanting to get this rank for recognition or whatever, and actually aren't getting any better.
I wonder how much that happens in no gi versus gi, where I don't think anybody really who trains here really is
I will say that
focused on the belt to the point that's their goal. It's more so everybody just wants to learn jiu-jitsu.
I will dare to say that the reason why that isn't the case is that because that isn't part of our normal outfit every day.
Yeah.
We have a little wall on in my studio that has some keychains that has belt ranks on there just to show people's progress and, ways for me to stripe people up. But if you were rolling every single day and you were putting that belt on and everyone sees that second stripe or third stripe on your belt or black belt or whatever, it's way more focused all the time. So I think no-gi gyms don't necessarily have it because I think the generalized culture is usually people who train no-gi are more competitive focus. So you're getting here to just get good and then maybe do competitions. So those are people that are a little bit more bit by the bug of jiu-jitsu, and they don't really need any recognition of skill development. They just come here, they're part of the culture, they enjoy the space, they're just getting better. And then if their coach feels like they're ready for a new belt, then they'll get a belt at that point. So
I think if you have a very mindful coach, that way could work. Like
as far as time is concerned,
not time, just like where you said their coach essentially is like, I think you're ready for this belt. Well, I think that could work at the higher the belt you get to.
I think it works better when people are devoted to the practice. And let's say, for example, I wouldn't want someone who is consistently competing at a white belt level where I can clearly see their skills are beating other white belts or they're winning at competitions. Is like, okay, at that point, you'll have to go to blue belt. And this is kind of this other standard where, and first I'll say with the attendance-based stuff, at least it's a metric. There are some schools that do not have any metric whatsoever of you attending, and they'll give a rough standard like, it takes about 2 or 3 years, and you'll get there. So at least they say 100 classes, 2 years, like bare minimum, and you will get your next belt. So at least that's something. There are other.
It's at least measurable.
It's measurable. Like it's something that someone can walk into and they see the belt ranks and they say, "Hey, coach, how do I go about getting promoted in jiu-jitsu?" Everybody listening to this, I challenge you to talk with your coach or professor and ask them about their promotion system. If it is not abundantly clear from day one or frequently of what your process is, I challenge you to talk with them. Many people do not have any system of balances where they're actually getting promoted. I know one person personally that was a 4-stripe blue belt, and they did not get promoted for 3 years because their coach just, kind of forgot about them in the cracks, and they ended up leaving their school because when asked, they basically were given a really like, oh, just try to compete a little bit more, do this, and then we'll talk about it. And then after like 6 months, nothing else happened, and decided to leave.
Were they like legit a purple belt skill-wise?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at that point, it was just like involvement with the school and everything, and they just said, screw this. Like the problem was they're seeing other people get promoted. They're seeing other people progress and move forward. So it just was like a weird, in the crack system or something like that. Like there wasn't some sort of standard operating procedure that everyone got applied to all the time. So when you look at that, some coaches will say, all right, Matt, if you want to get promoted to blue belt, you're going to have to podium 2 or 3 times. So you have to go compete now.
That's so crazy because you don't know who you're going to be up against.
Well, they just assume that when you're going against other white belts or other blue belts in your weight division, that is a close metric to say, all right, experience, years, size, So if you're able to beat these people at competition, then, you get a belt. It's still like a loose and relaxed format. At least it's something. It'd be different if the coach said, all right, if anyone of you want to get to the next belt rank, you have to podium, which means get at least, bronze or whatever 3 times in your competitions.
But if everybody was doing it, is what you're saying, then it's a little bit more like consolidated versus the example you just gave about the 4-stripe blue belt.
Yeah, I'm saying like if their promotion process was to say you're getting promoted based on your competition prowess, then at least everyone knows, okay, I haven't competed. So I haven't competed well. So I have to work on my game here and then go and try and compete again.
I got a hot take after.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Is it about competition?
It's about belt promotions.
Sure.
And it's something that I just think is kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because you and I are a little bit contrarian to like control structures,
Yes.
We don't like being controlled around here. But no, really, where there's like some other podcasts and YouTubers and stuff like that, I hear say, never ask about your belt.
Oh, that's a big
That
one.
is so dumb.
That's so dumb.
Ask about your belt. You are paying for a service if it's important to you, and like your coach is not willing to have a conversation with you about it. Like, that probably sounds like a pretty cruddy coach. Now, if you're asking them every single day and just being and that's like, I'm going to put this with anything, that would just be annoying, right?
So let's give that example. That I had that very same thought too for your boss at work.
Yeah, if you're not sometimes you got to ask for promotion.
Well, you got to ask to say, what is this going to take for me to be recognized at this next level of responsibility and to work my way up? If they're not giving you a clear path, or at least some semblance of a path, like that could be a little bit of a red flag. But if you're asking every single day, like, can I get it now? Can I get it now? Can I get it now? It's like, well, I've told you and I laid out what to do. So until you do it, that's about it. But most of the coaches who say, don't ask about promotions, I guarantee you it's because either A, they don't have anything laid out, or they're just being rude. Like, if they have something laid out, they should just tell you. The problem is most coaches don't want to tell you. They either A, don't have something, or B, the real truth is that I just want you to stay here longer, and then if you dedicate your contracts and your time here for 2 or 3 years, then I'll reward you with getting a blue belt.
Yeah.
That's a spicy take, but it's very true, and that's an unfortunate truth for a lot of gyms.
It's weird. It's just, that one is just always makes me so gross, and I get annoyed with it, so I have to say something about it.
No, you should.
Because like railing against that type of thinking in martial arts.
Yeah.
That's like, if we do anything with this podcast, I hope we make a couple other more dissenters of the traditional martial art. Because you and I, we were part of that for a while. We not like that we were perpetuating it, but we were like, we felt the, like essentially what it's like being in that environment of the yes sir, no sir, bowing all the time. Like all this, like this.
Well, it's very militaristic.
Overt, like unearned respect sometimes too.
Yep. Well, I think that comes down to personality types. Like, some people probably don't mind that environment. Like, cool, there's a hierarchy. There's, if they don't mind that kind of like militaristic type feel where it's like, this is my pecking order. I get my beatings in, I gotta get my things, and my hazing in, like to get recognized. It's I don't feel it's healthy, but at least some people recognize like that's the way to go.
I guess if they want to do it.
To me, it's not about any of those things, Matt. It's about saying at least articulate it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, whatever standards you're gonna put out there for any of your students, articulate it. Say it. Like, let someone from day one saying, here's how we're gonna progress through your belt ranks or your stripes. So at least there's no confusion about it. It negates favoritism. It negates people getting falling through the cracks. Like, it's just an easy system. Even if it sounds weird to say you have to podium 3 times or get first place 3 times, at least it's a standard that every one of these mats know. You might get someone go, hey, I don't like competing that much, so what if I don't want to compete? Then go, well, sorry, that's the way I format it.
Yeah, hypothetically.
And assume that they leave at that point, because you're just setting your standards for what you do. Now, if you get enough people to say, hey, I don't want to compete and do this, either you change your promotion standard, or you say, I guess owning a jiu-jitsu school with this spirit in mind is not going to work.
So, just to be clear to listeners too, that's not what Levi recommends.
No, I'm giving just examples of like how people are going through this system.
I wanted to get your take on something.
Okay.
Was this
my life right now?
What? Okay.
I like doing this.
Okay. So because we talked about, a couple different things about promotions there. What do you think about graduations when they do them in bulk?
Okay, so my thought process when it's bulk, first of all, if you look at...
Explain what that is first.
Sure. So twice a year, a lot of places will do like a summer promotion or winter promotion where everybody comes to the school and they'll kind of bulk give away ranks. So you'll get a lot of blue belts. You might get a few purple belts. Rarely, you might get a brown belt. And on special occasions, someone gets promoted to black belt. But it's about like twice a year. Pros with it, I think it's, as far as a communal event, it's fun.
Yeah, it'd be cool to get everybody together.
Everybody's together. They get to see people get promoted. I mean, you and I going through
good energy,
the karate system of doing like black belt promotions. Like, your parents are there, your family's there. Like, everybody's seeing you go up on stage.
I never did the black belt promotion.
That's right. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, because
I did it 3 times.
I was
that's right.
I was very
but anyways,
contrarian with the belts.
It's a communal thing, or even just the other belts. It might not have been black belt. It's like there's like every 2 months or 3 months.
Yeah,
it's like
they do the little.
There's a little ceremony type thing. So I can see it communal wise. It's fun to say we all get this together. The problem is with the karate system, you're getting promoted. So it's not really a surprise. Like I've come to 3 months, I'm getting a new belt. Man,
Yeah. You're a yellow belt
teenage years
now.
seemed so long versus when I think about like how long it was between belts. Like it's just like you're trading out belts so quickly. But with
Didn't even break that one in.
yeah, exactly. With jiu-jitsu though, the weird part is from a lot of people I've heard with those yearly promotions, they don't know. So what happens is that they all have to show up.
Oh, that's a con.
You all
like,
have to show up.
I'm meaning like not pro and con,
Yeah,
but that's a con.
That's a con. You all have to show up
Gone con.
and sit and wait to see if you got promoted. Yeah, 100%. It's a real thing.
People's time is valuable, dudes.
But it's like you're saying about the dance stuff the other day. But it's just like it's a con thing. It's like to say like let's see if you spin and you're lucky right now for a full belt.
Yeah, and then if not, sorry, come back next quarter.
But then the hard part is like
or
we
6
just
months
said
later.
to say imagine if someone was expecting to think they got a blue belt. Like let's say they have 4 stripes on their white belt and they're like, this is it. And all of a sudden like, wah, wah, like, sorry, you didn't get it. Well, now it's easy enough to go up. Like, let's say, for example, some guy at your work, person at your work got promoted into a position you were gunning for. And all of a sudden you're like, what? What happened? Like, and then you go up to your boss going, oh, I thought I was somewhat close. Like, what happened? What did I need to do? Or something wasn't clear. At least your boss can go, well, this is, either I made this clear before or I was expecting this. So there's a miscommunication on that. But having surprise belt ceremonies like that, well, in bulk is different.
There's one way, I'm trying to think of a way to like redeem this just for the sake of playing devil's advocate.
Sure.
And not because I'm into this idea, but if the professor, I don't even want to use that word. God,
Coach,
you got me using it now.
I know.
But if the coach or instructor, and if they didn't give a belt, they should give like a good piece of like written feedback to go, hey, for all those who were at 4 stripes who didn't get promoted, see me after this, and I have information for you of like, these are the things you need to accomplish to reach that next level.
Here's what I would do instead. If I were to do that as a model, what I would do is biannually belt test. If you want to test for your belt rank twice a year, everyone comes together and we do some big tests.
Oh, you're saying like someone signs up for it?
Yeah, to say if you want to test for your belt, twice a year we do a belt testing ceremony.
Okay,
So here's what happens. You come in there.
Put yourself out there.
I've not even thought about this 1 second, so this is all top of my head.
Yeah.
There's some sort of test. Let's say, okay, everyone switches to guard, everyone switches to mount, everyone switches to blah, blah, blah. And we have like 4 or 5 people walking around taking notes or maybe latched onto one person, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, you have to hit X amount of achievements or things to be able to do. And then, everyone's taking a break or they're doing something else. We're in the back room going, okay, who hit this? Who hit that? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, Matt got all the points, so he's ready for blue belt. Blah, blah, blah. Everyone's sitting in the back wall. We come out and go, all right, everyone, great job today. A lot of great effort. We do have some belt ranks. So, we got a lot of great performances out there. And all right, so we got Matt got his blue belt. Oh, great, fantastic, blah, blah, blah. And do the whole thing. What I would do, though, is that everyone, belted or not, would receive basically a report card on their skill performance.
That's a cool idea.
Matt, you did wonderful in all these kind of spots. Here's some little notes on maybe what to enhance for next one, but congrats, it's awesome. Hey, John, you did really great at your leg locks. Didn't do really so well at mount escapes. So you were close. So I want you to hit that more these next couple months. And I think if you can nail that down the next time, you'll be fine.
What if you had like a feedback thing quarterly?
Yeah.
This would be a lot of work for you. And
It's
it'd be
tough
hard
at
to,
that
because
point.
you'd have to do one match at a time
Well,
or
and
things
that's
like
the
that.
idea, like to say, that's why I said about 4 or 5 people walking around. But that's what you do it, because then at least during the test, people can walk away and they could say, whatever the case may be, because Jill with her daughter, she goes to like gymnastics. And the fact is that they give out report cards. Like they give out report cards. So at the end, they sit there and have like 6 skill sets and they go, oh, hey, you did great at the front stroke. Breaststroke wasn't really the best. Treading water was okay. And you couldn't really hold your breath underwater. So they score it. And then if you scored excellent in these different areas, then they say, cool, you're ready for level 2. But a lot of times they don't say like you failed. They just say, great job. We'll see you back in level 1.
Back
kind of
in
thing.
Polywog.
But it all says like certificate or like report card. Like there's not this strong
progress report
basically. But she gets it hung up on the fridge, and she feels good about it. There's no like negativity with it. And it's like just the way that's formatted. So I think if you were to do big things like that, it can't be a surprise. Because the surprise going, okay, you got here how? Like I got a blue belt, like, and for their bachelor degree.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if like it's 4 times a year, like
guys,
you said, or twice a year?
We're handing out a bachelor degree,
I think
2 masters and a doctorate.
Imagine if like you went to some big ceremony and you have to down on and you're like, oh, I've been hitting it hard in these classes. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And I said, I got it. Yes, I got the bachelor's degree.
I tried really hard on that paper,
Yeah. But imagine they go through and they don't award you.
Yeah.
And also you go up to one of your, your teachers and you're like, I don't know what happened. And they go,
take some more quizzes.
I don't know, take some more quizzes, study a little bit more. But they're like, here's 3.7, grade point average or blah, blah, blah. Like there's some metric of scores to hit to be eligible to be promoted. So I'm saying those yearly things. Again, I'm sorry that if your gym or place does those kind of things. This is just my opinion being outside
of it. If this works for them, that's great.
And that's fine. This is just my opinions and thoughts of the pros and cons of these promotion systems. But to me, what it does is that it either promotes people that are not ready or that may not be ready for the next belt rank, or they're way behind and promoting people who are very overly ready for the next belt rank. That gets people who feel like they're sandbagging now in competitions. That gets people who are overranked. And they're competing, or they're going other places, and people going, "Wow, you don't feel like a brown belt or a purple belt? Like, who gave you that belt?" And all of a sudden, now schools can get a bad name a little bit because you're just handing out belts at that point, or you're like sandbagging.
If you're on both sides of that spectrum, people will know. Like if it's like, oh, and there's so and so from this school where they sandbag all the time, you're just gonna be like, God, they always sand. Always, everybody's always gonna talk about it too.
At least the ranks get artificially inflated or deflated at that point. If you're at a place you're like, yeah, I know they promote a little quicker, you're kind of expecting that with the belt rank. But then at the other end, it's like if they're like, wow, they really hold back promotions a long time, you could just assume that a blue belt might be a purple belt or a purple belt might be a blue belt. So I think that's my take on the yearly promotion system. Again, communal, fun, a good community, people getting together, that's fine.
Some massive benefits to it.
But as far as skill development, I would do the measurement type of base thing.
Okay, so we talked about random, we talked about the big group one.
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to shamelessly plug kind of what you do?
I got more, Matt. There's so many more.
We might have to do a part. We're at 37 minutes.
Okay, well, I'll quickly run through it because I can talk forever. Knowledge-based. So there are some schools that say not only do you have to hit X attendance, but you have to demonstrate, 50 techniques. And the techniques mean show a knee slice, show a monoscape, show a trap and roll, show a armbar, whatever the case may be. That makes sense. So you're showing techniques, right? So at least there's some demonstration of your knowledge of the functional movement of these, these grappling aspects. The hard part is one, that you attach a time limit to it. So to say, let's say I spend 3 months and work hard with somebody and I get them up to feeling a comfort that they can perform these techniques. Now I go to their coach and like, cool, here's 3 months, like they've got it. And they go, sorry, on average, it takes about 100 classes, but we actually require 100 classes before you get to be promoted. So now it's not like, oh, it's not just the technique, it's like technique and class attendance. So I think, again, if schools rely too heavily on class attendance and years, I think that's a big red flag. Like it completely spits in the face of your technological and skill development. And like I mentioned before, if you're utilizing chess as an example or rock climbing as an example, it does not care about how long you've been doing something, either beyond average or less than average. If you could show the skill set, you deserve to get recognized for your achievements. But if at least there's technique, that's fine. But to me, the important aspect of jiu-jitsu is the rolling aspect and sparring aspect. They had mentioned that Taekwondo is looking to split, as far as ranking systems are concerned, between kata and sparring.
Oh, interesting.
So they would promote people based on their kata abilities as a separate...
Is this like USA Taekwondo, you're saying?
Something like that. I remember reading an article about it. But promoted just on that. So you can show and demonstrate all you want, but then the sparring element was completely different. Like they don't see any strong crossovers between the two. Like one becomes an artistic gymnastic type thing, and the other one becomes a hard sparring aspect.
That'd be great, actually. When I was in karate, I hated doing forms, but I loved sparring.
But
you know?
I can imagine jiu-jitsu would turn out to be the same way. Like you get a belt rank demonstrating these randomized techniques and solutions, and they can look crisp and they can look good. Like I said, a dance, that's what katas are, things like that. It's just a series of movement that in theory that should be translating well to sparring, but it just doesn't. It's like a million times, like Bruce Lee was one of those big guys who would see all the Wing Chun drills on the Wing Chun dummy.
Yeah.
And then he'd say they would fight on rooftops and all these Kung Fu masters were just brawling. Like it went back to just straight up throwing hooks and all this kind of stuff. Like there was no actual formalness to it. It was just chaos. And that like broke his brain that he's like, I thought this was like the killer stuff, which is why he came out with Jeet Kune Do. Like he felt that rigidity was not actually conducive to these live sparring events. So I think if it's just technique, once again, if you do have a promotion system based on technique demonstration, once again, you have to separate time from it. You cannot tell people, get these techniques and then have time. Just say these techniques. If you can demonstrate these techniques, that's your promotion system. But again, I don't feel that the techniques are attached to live sparring capabilities, which I think is the heart and soul of jiu-jitsu on top of grappling arts on top of the submission focused. Your skills, and the other one I think would be knowledge. Knowledge is just like, you can tell me what you know. Like, do you know the rough framework to pass guard? Do you know your goals in mount? Do you do these things? Like, it's the same thing. Like, if you have a knowledge-based thing, that's fine. But again, like, I think a lot of it's skill set measurement. That would probably be the best one. So,
boom.
But then as far as like mine is concerned, the big one now that I'm pushing and looking to finalize is submission based, which sounds intense. But we have a lot of safety nets with it. A lot of it is culture based, so make sure you're respectful for people. And the second part of it is that there's a lot of things going with it. The idea is that looking to have people who are like white belt or blue belt or whatever hit X amount of submissions amongst 5 different submission families, which is arm locks, shoulder locks, leg locks, headlocks, and triangle chokes.
You know, it's funny. Should we share how this idea first got started?
It's from the Toad?
No, not from the Toad.
It's
when we were talking about the labors from the God of War enhanced DLC.
Yep.
You know, like
100% what that was.
Yeah, we were like, how cool would that be? And then you actually took it and actually did something with it.
Labors. You have to do this because again, if you can hit, let's say 100 submissions of a variety on your fellow white belt, well, I feel at that point it's you should move on. Now, it's not just 100 submissions. My thought process is going to be double that. It's you have to hit the second submission in a row. So let's say, for example, Matt and I are rolling. I get him in a front headlock. Cool, that's fine. If we keep sparring and I get him in a leg lock, well, that second one counts, and that's the one that I'll count towards my promotion. So you'll have a card that marks and tracks your promotion at that point. So the goals for right now, 20 of each. And then once you hit 100, you're eligible for your next belt. Each 20 gets you eligible for your stripe. Eligible just means that you get to give a roll with me, basically see how you are in guard, mount, all these other places. But it's very loose and relaxed. I just want to see the language being attached to you a little bit more. But if you're getting those submissions in, like that's a practical skill demonstration at that point. And then when you move to blue belt, now you've got to do it against other blue belts for the same submission. I do have some things where I adjust it based on people's size and age as well too. But the interesting part about this is that it is very much honor-based and culture-based.
Do you have like a card you're going to give people?
Yep. Everyone will have a card that either they can hold on to themselves. So when they're rolling and sparring, either after a match or at the end of the night, you just go through to X off your own cards. Because
we put it in our belts and then walk onto the mat and bow and then hand our card in?
No, I mean, it could just basically be a space. I would say it's something that you probably would hold on to because that way you don't have to be looking at other people's cards.
Yeah.
You know, like to say like, ooh, this person's
don't be looking at my card.
Yeah. So you basically be responsible for keeping it for yourself. I was looking
As you see me pencil whipping all the armbar ones. Like,
I was thinking about creating an online digital one as well too, that people can go on their Google Sheets or whatever and X off as well too. So people feel like they don't have the card, they can just do it online. But it is very private. But for this one, like as the school is growing and everyone's doing well, it makes it so that people don't fall through the cracks. People are very on it for themselves as far as the promotion system. But again, the submissions aren't like the heart and soul of it because, first of all, it's your partners, like Matt was saying in the other podcast, of cranking nets and cranking submissions. Like everything has to be done with control and respect, which will be in my videos explaining this. But on top of that is that in order to get submissions, you have to be able to be good at all these things. Better control means more likely chance that you will submit somebody. If you have back control, that's really great control, you have a higher chance of submitting somebody. You could
Plus, it feels cool.
It feels cool too.
You know, when you have really good control.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, or you can be in guard passing and you can flip and get a front headlock on someone and get an anaconda. It's like, well, you got a submission. It was a little higher risk, but you have the capability of doing so. So there's all these skill sets. But to me, I don't know why I gave this example, and this might not be the best example, so I apologize. But it's like, like there's all these things that have to like lead up to this end goal. I made the example actually wasn't the best, so I'll actually negate it. But basically, say if you want to climb to the top of the mountain, you still have to go through different paths and different ways to get up there. I don't care how you get up there. That allows for expression and allows for certain skill sets and pathways as they adapt and change. That jiu-jitsu does. It adapts and changes. Pretty soon, one guard pass works really well, and next day, there's a new innovation. Same with the berimbolo. Like everybody was wanting to do a certain way to take the back, and then now suddenly this berimbolo came along, and now everybody's using that to get to the top of the mountain quicker. So I'm basically measuring how people get to the top at that point. Definitely some kinks that I'm still working out with, but I definitely feel having a skill-based metric allows for more expression for jiu-jitsu.
It'd be interesting to see what these cards look like and whatnot.
I mean, they're kind of similar. I mean, the idea is that it's going to be like columns.
It's almost like a mini golf kind of thing.
Yeah, and on there too, there you go. On there too, it's going to be definitely the rules will always be on there, like kind of like what's expected of you, like culture and stuff like that. So it's always this agreement that
I think you had some from a couple of years, like last year, right?
Well, and this idea that I want people to know that we are working with our training partners. So even though submission sounds intense, when Matt and Luke were talking about what defines jiu-jitsu, to me it's submissions. There's no other martial art that has submission holds as a central part of their grappling art. So I'm like, well, if you want to measure your jiu-jitsu capabilities, I think submission is there. And I said it with a spread because I don't want someone who's just a leg lock master going through be a purple belt, brown belt. It's like, well, the moment that gets beat or the meta changes, suddenly all their skill sets just go out the window. Not out the window completely, but it's suddenly like if they pass your legs, now suddenly you have really bad side control or mount or whatever. So doing it across the board at a bare minimum shows that you have a greater understanding of jiu-jitsu across the board, so that if you're a purple belt going against a white belt, I can basically tell the purple belt, hey, could you get that white belt in armbar? And they go, yep, I can do an armbar. I can do this. Now, they might have a strong specialty in arm triangles, which they could tap black belts with, but at a bare minimum.
Is it flexible enough, too, that, for instance, if you were like, hey, I like to armbar with my foot around the back of the neck kind of thing, like if they have a certain way they like to do an armbar, or hey, I like doing the armbar with the foot underneath the scapula or something. Does it give that flexibility that they can do whatever armbar they want?
100%. And
cool.
The idea is that as you go through the belt
triangles.
ranks, exactly. As you go through the belt ranks, it will become more and more difficult to catch submissions on more and more experienced people. Because the more experience they get, they're going to know that arm bars are coming or triangles are coming, and they know common counters and defenses. So as you go up through the rank, your strategy will naturally have to adjust. If you just set the end goal, the end metric, everything changes in that end. You don't have to tell people saying, you have to learn combos, you have to learn this. Why? Because it will help you. Well, fine. Put the end goal, show them here's some options to get that. And if they can get that end goal, it's most likely because they've incorporated these strategies. They've incorporated combos. They've incorporated micro details and trap setting and things like that. Like they've incorporated it. You can't just tap a brown belt or a black belt with an armbar. Like you can't just do it. They know what it is. They know common counters. They know setups with it. Like you have to be a lot more creative with it. So if you just keep measuring the same end metric against fellow belt ranks, it's just such an easy thing as a coach to measure versus what? Measuring 20 different skill sets at the same time, guard passing, mount escapes, all stuff. Like it's so much versus the end goal is just saying submission. Because that way it takes out takedowns and guard passes and throws, which are all great with every other grappling art. But to say, hey, I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt or purple belt, to me, if you tell it to someone, they're going to automatically think submission. They're not going to think like, ooh, this guy's great at taking someone down. It's like, it's submission is what they're focused on. So if you put it,
there's a lot of options for guards too and stuff like that.
I don't care what you do. It actually gets exemplified by my grappling invitational. 10 minutes, submission only. I don't care if you sit. I don't care if you lay on your back. I don't care if you do donkey guard. I don't care what you do. The end goal still has to be a controlled submission at that point. Doesn't matter. At the end, when we have a 10-minute match and it doesn't go that far, then we do it based on judges basing it off how much you were pushing the pace and trying to advance towards that submission, or were you negating their offense a lot, trying to be defensive and trying to survive, or were you trying to stall and not trying to progress too much? Like if it looks like you're trying to climb the mountain, that's what you're getting, rewarded on. Not like trying to be really crafty with it. Like they want to see that you're trying to reach the top and touch the top at that point. So that way you could do whatever strategies you want, because let's say in 2 years, Matt, some crazy strategy comes out from like the B team or whatever that changes the landscape of jiu-jitsu. But guess what doesn't change? It's submission. It's like you still have to submit your opponent, which is what changes it. Now, rule sets can change, which is like ADCC or all these things. Like people will get BJJ belts and, different art forms. But the idea is that they might get it because they're good at getting points in competition. They're good at, winning competitions because points or different rule sets in competition change all the time. So what, are you a purple belt at ADCC rules? Are you a brown belt at IBJJF rules?
Good point.
Like those, the end, it's what you guys were arguing before. It's like, what is that end metric to measure what measures your jiu-jitsu skill sets? So if there's all these varying things, this is why it's very simple when you measure things like arm wrestling. Just whoever's knuckles hit the ground, in that sense. I'm sure it's more complicated, but like whoever hits the ground, they don't care what your tactics are, what your strategies are, what books you've read, what people you've worked with. You just have to hit the end. That's it. The problem is with grappling is that it has a huge variety of win sets. This is our whole conversation over Golden Toad. Like there's all these points in there, and then suddenly someone catches the toad, and it's done.
Be really funny is if your cards, the checkbox was little golden toad.
Oh, that's
and you had
amazing.
to check off all the toads you caught.
Little toads. That'll be our school mascot pretty soon. It won't be this black hole. It'll just be a golden toad. That'd be just too much on the nose. But anyways, my metric is submission-based stuff. It allows for all your tactics leading up to it, getting to control positions.
It simplifies it. It's down to the one thing. What is the one thing?
Yep.
That because if you can understand that, it'll simplify everything else, right?
Well, to say like if I want to get to a mount position or a side control position, what do I have to do? I have to take them down to the ground, and I have to get past their legs. Well, that's the strategies we implement in here to say, here's guard passing, here's takedown strategies. Like we're giving you all the tools in our experience, but if you want to use something creative and new and different or more best fits your personality, I don't care. As long as you're able to hit that end metric. So it makes it measurable, easy. It sounds very visceral when we talk about submissions. Like it seems like it's going to be a bloodbath. But I'm not sure if I explained this to Matt before, but this is why I give the 2 submission rule. Because it allows you, against someone who's, let's say, less experienced than you, to play around with them, to work with them, to guide them through things. You walk them through a submission hold, and they get a headlock, and that's fine. Now your goal is either you're going to play defensive and just play around with them, or you just walk through a little bit of offense, be nice with them, and you get them in a submission hold.
So you're saying the first sub, no matter who gets it, just doesn't count for that round?
Correct. Doesn't count. It's not the second one in the whole round. You personally have to get 2 in a row.
Gotcha.
So if like you tapped this person, this guy named Max, if you tapped him next, it doesn't mean your submission counts. But let's say you slap bump with Max and you take him down, you get him in an arm lock, and that's fine. When you slap bump again, now it's like if you are able to tap him again for a second time in a row, that's the one that counts.
Cool.
Because if you are experienced and you have this ability to ward off, let's say less experienced people, you should be able to survive, the next couple minutes and not let that person get to you. But if they pass your guard, guys like Lachlan Giles say that all the time. He's like, I'd much rather get tapped than have my guard get passed. Because guard is like a system of control versus just a submission. So if like your guard gets passed and you get controlled and they isolate your arm and they tap you.
That's a neat thing I've never heard him say that, but that resonates with me.
Because he says that's a getting into the vault. That's like all these things set up to say you should not be able to get chest to chest with me. That's long range guards, middle range guards, short range guards, and you got chest to chest with me and hip control. Like, that should not happen.
That's a good heuristic too. It's funny because it helps prevent the submission so much.
So if you're really concerned about lesser experienced people tapping you and having that as a thing, you should be working in opening games much more. Or if you allow them to pass and to work on a defensive end, your guard retention should be on point, your offense should be on point, that you shouldn't let them happen. So doing it on the second one allows for playfulness back and forth. So if you tap them, then you can say, okay, well, I'll let you tap me. And like I said, you have to do it with your own belt rank. So myself as a brown belt can't go and tap I'm not in the belt ranking system right now, but it's like to say as a brown belt, you can't be tapping white belts 2 times in a row and getting, points off of that.
Oh, that's going to be hard for me. We've only got a couple blue belts here.
So here's how this is going to adjust, Matt. So let's say, for example, you have some white belts in class and you're like, there's not really a blue belt here or there. It still counts if it's a white belt who's like 40 or 50 pounds heavier than you.
Oh, yeah, because you had that.
Because now we artificially inflate with size and strength, right? Like that's a real metric.
Being a medium-sized guy has never been so great.
It feels good, though, but it's the same thing. So if you go and get like a purple belt who's smaller than you, to me, that evens out things too.
Okay.
Right? So that allows you to flex with your skill sets at that point. And I've got some other things that are very close to that. It takes a little bit to implement, but I think if people are aware of it, and again, I will stamp this out very clearly. This does not mean that once you hit it, you are automatically guaranteed that stripe. It gives you eligibility to have that stripe, which means you get to roll with me and just make sure that loose things at point. I know that's not a strong metric, but to at least see that you know a brief understanding of the game. But at that point, then that's where stripes are happening and things like that. Because go as much as you want, fast as you want, slow as you want. I don't care.
A thought on this too?
It's the labors.
So you don't end up asking everybody's weight and age all the time. Yep. You just kind of like shoot from the hip. If they're bigger than you, like you just go, they're roughly the same size. They're bigger, they're smaller than you.
Matthew, this is the honor system that's being in place. This is why it only works with having a strong culture in your group.
I hear what you're saying.
Someone goes, well, you're technically like probably about 10 pounds heavier than me, so that count. Like, no, it's saying it's a very Spartan kind of feeling. Like I want it to count.
Yeah.
So you should feel like did it feel like this person was?
I'll be honest. I suck at arm bars. If I get an arm bar on anybody, I might count it because I'm so bad at them right now.
It doesn't mean that people have strong, but like saying amongst your own peers, you should find ways to, if you want to be a blue belt across the board, because people say that with like bachelor's degrees and whatever. They don't say you're really good at one thing. They say that you're like a Renaissance person across the board, right? So if you were a purple belt and I say, Matt, go arm lock a white belt, and you can't do that, that to me is too much of a specialty. Like,
yeah, that's fair.
I think you should be at least to hit a white belt with an arm
it almost
lock
like the first couple belts, like white, blue, and purple, are more general, and then maybe it starts siphoning.
It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it's like, I think getting above and beyond, I think you could find ways to be able to hit it. You might say, Levi was eating my vegetables with that one. That's fine, but
I like that term.
But to say like you are, then you go back into your leg locks or arm lock or shoulder locks or whatever, like that's fine, but you have to at least show that you can do that. Because I've met many people who just played on their A game the whole time and squishing people with their size or whatever. And like, I just get everybody with a Kessa choke or whatever. It's like, okay, but does that mean that person's a purple belt or brown belt? Like, I don't think so. Until somebody escapes it, now the rest of their game is completely empty.
Plus, I think a lot of people, including myself, are going to be, when I'm eating my vegetables are good for you, and I'll probably end up finding some great submission, like, setups and things like that I would have never found had I not been willing to explore it.
And to me, I think if I'm giving my own personal expression with it, like to me that demonstrates the belt ranks across the board.
Yeah, you can still be good at jiu-jitsu or be effective in competition and only know like 2 moves. But if you want to be like recognized for it, you have to have more breadth and depth.
I mean, and this is a thing too, like if you feel like someone's going light on you, to say like someone's really small or really big. The hard part with bigger people too is that like you have to then adjust your skill level based on like not using too much of your physical strength to do something. You have to almost like articulate to yourself. And this, again, to me is how I flex with every one of my members, because if I know there's a much bigger person and they get to that point, I'm going to make sure that as I'm working through them, I want them to talk them out to me, like what they're trying to do. Like now bigger people have to give me more frameworks. Smaller people have to be able to, be technical with their movements and be very strong with how they're moving. But those things I feel is a lot better than some of these old standards out there, I would say. And I'm not saying this is the final end, but I think this is a much better conversation.
It's be a cool iteration.
But then people having, it's like, oh, I'm just going to do 100 classes. I don't care. There's going to be, like I said, 10% on each end that are going to get mad or upset or that go through, but 80% are kind of there. It's like, it doesn't seem like a good spirit of the sport.
This will be cool to see how it all turns out.
And like I said, I'm not having an ego saying I've solved it, but it's what
you're trying.
This is what the whole process of the place is of theory. The idea is we're trying things. We're trying to get closer, like Matt was saying, getting closer and closer to the source, that we're trying to improve things. And I think if you don't have a studio or a gym that's always looking to improve things, you're just sitting in comfort at that point, and you're going to be left behind with the times.
All right. So, folks, you can find us on thegrapplingpodcast.com.
Let's do it.
We're also on Xbox under Grapple Pod.
I feel like we got to take advantage of that one of these days.
Yeah. Eventually, Levi and I have this great idea to do when we have time. We have this dream. It's a Dungeons and Dragons dream, and we'll do that someday. But that's all I'm going to leave that out say about that for now.
Yes.
And then we're also on Facebook, Instagram, most places that you can click and like things. Are we the Grappling Podcast or are we Grapple Pod? What are we in?
The Grappling Podcast. I think full name. I was so surprised.
Give us
these handles.
Yeah. So give us a like. If you really like our stuff, please share it. That actually does help a lot.
Yep.
We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you guys later. Maybe at a promotion.
Nice.